Hello, everybody. Welcome to In the Umpires Clubhouse. I'm Bob Busser. He's Dale Scott. He's Jim Joyce. And we have a different show today. We don't have any guests. The guests are Bob, Dale, and Jimmy. We're going to do a little ballpark roundup. We're going to talk about quirks of different ballparks, our favorites, our least favorites, and watering holes and places to grab some grub around the ballpark that may not be on your five-star Michelin guidebook list. I mean, these are places that have really great food. So without further ado, let's get it rolling. Hi, guys.
What's up, Bobby?
Hello,
uh,
Robert.
Same shit, different day. Oh, so we are repping BU today. So
BU. Okay.
not PU, BU, Dale.
Okay, you got it.
So we're going to start off. Let's start with Old Yankee Stadium.
Old
Uh,
Yankee Stadium. Oh
Yeah,
my goodness.
the new I know Jimmy, that also big smile on your face. Old Yankee Stadium was a cathedral. It was a shrine to baseball. And if you didn't never got there, you're missing something. The new ballpark to me is a mall park. It's all these five-star restaurants and crap. If you go to a ballpark, and most of my friends feel the same way, and I think Jimmy and Dale, you feel like this. Um, you want to go to the ballpark, have a beer and have a hot dog and watch the game. I just don't get the upscale food,
Yeah.
but people
You know,
like it.
it's
That's for them.
Well, yeah,
you know, what's funny about us is we never saw that kind of
yeah,
stuff. We
exactly.
we for the years that Dale and I spent in the major leagues, the only information we would get, Dale would get it from Mike, and I'd get it from my wife Kay and my family on how the hot dogs were or how the concessions were and stuff like this. And my wife always threatened me. Kay always said to me, she goes, "One of these days you're going to have to sit in the stands."
Well, a funny story about that is at the old Comiskey, which was not. It's gotten better, but at that time it was really not a very good part of town, right?
Mhm.
And uh, Mike was in Chicago. I was working Comiskey early in my career, and he didn't necessarily want to come an hour and a half before the game and all that stuff. So I'll just, game time's at 7. I'll just show it. And I said, yeah, it's not the greatest. It's not like you can walk to it. It's not, and, um, but, I would always get people saying, well, what about this or what about that? And the stand, I go, well, I've never been in the stands. I don't know what it's like. I don't know. I'm not sure. I can tell you what our locker room's like. I can tell you what our, the food that we get or whatever. But it's funny because we've been to these ballparks a zillion times, and rarely have we been in the stand. I sat in the stands after a game at Fenway once when there was nobody there, which was kind of cool because it was so quiet and they were watering the lawn. It was after a day game, and that kind of stuff. I also realized sitting in the stands that day that the seats were made for people that were what 12 pounds. I don't know. I mean,
You got the blue seats, didn't you, Dale?
I don't know. They were very
Yeah,
narrow.
those are the blue seats. Yeah, they're wooden and they suck.
Yeah.
They're not made for anybody. You're tall, I'm tall, Jimmy's tall. You can't get in those seats. I mean, I'm like, we went there. True story. 2013, we went there with my mother-in-law, Evan, my sister-in-law, and my wife. My mother-in-law's last trip before she passed away, and she bought Fenway Park tickets, Red Sox tickets. She didn't realize the seating, and so I'm walking in and I see Blue Reserve, and I'm like, oh shit. So I get there and I literally I'd have to angle just to get into the seats, and I couldn't sit. And so I go down to the concierge in right field, and he looks at me and he goes, "You got a blue seat, didn't you?" How can you tell? He goes, I said, "My family's here." He goes, "Well, we can't move them all." So he gave me a seat right behind home plate. I lucked out on the deal. So,
Wow. Yeah.
but
Well,
yeah,
going back to Yankee Stadium, though, the original Yankee Stadium, I mean, from an umpire point of view, that was, going into the American League when I first started, it was just doing American League. Uh, Fenway and Yankee Stadium and Tiger Stadium were like the shrine. Well, actually, even when I started, old Baltimore Memorial Stadium, because I,
Yep.
I had a few years of that, and but they weren't equal. I mean, the Yankee Stadium was Yankee Stadium,
yeah,
and Fenway was Fenway. But we had some really. That's one thing about Jimmy and I. We saw a lot of ballparks, all the old ones, and then we saw a ton of new ones that
Yeah.
replaced them. So we really saw it. We really came into the game. in that era where we saw a lot of old and new kind of stuff. And so, I worked the last game ever at the old Texas Ranger Stadium, two stadiums ago. um,
And it wasn't that long ago, Dale. I mean,
no, no,
30 years ago. And now
right.
they're on their second stadium.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
it is crazy. And that they called it the erector set, that one.
Yeah.
Because originally it was their minor league when they were in the minor leagues, and then they just kind of built around it as they went. But if you look, I saw different stadiums in Seattle, San Francisco, San Diego, New York, Baltimore, Miami, Toronto. I worked. Did you work at the old X?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty much every stadium we saw when we started in the American League was changed except for Fenway Park and
Wrigley.
pretty
Kansas
much
City.
Kansas City. Yeah.
And Dodger Stadium too,
Yeah, as far as the national,
and Anaheim Stadium. Those are the oldest ones around.
Yeah, Anaheim. Yeah, they renovated it, but it changed quite a bit from what it was. I like the old Oakland Coliseum when they didn't have, when they didn't put the football in and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, no, Mount Davis ruined it.
Yeah,
and now it's just a shit show. It's well, you guys know that place is horrible.
Yeah,
sorry, it's just
Yankee Stadium was unique in a few aspects actually. The ground rules in Yankee Stadium were pretty much okay. I mean, they weren't too bad.
Right.
Being on the field at Yankee Stadium, I thought was kind of cool. I always thought that was kind of neat and stuff like that. But it was the underneath part of Yankee Stadium that was amazing. You call it a tunnel for a reason.
yes.
When you first arrived at Yankee Stadium, we usually had drivers, but when we first started, we just took cabs from
Midtown. The subway, yeah,
or the subway. And I got a kind of a cute story about that doing the subway one night. My partners had left. I had my son with me, so it was just Jimmy and I. And we got to the ballpark off the subway, and there used to be a police officer that used to greet us there by the name of Pete Chudy, and he was called Choo Choo. And so I get off the subway at 161st Street and start walking that ramp that goes over the freeway and stuff like that, and you get to the ballpark, and all of a sudden when you went downstairs, that's where Chudy always used to be, or Choo Choo. So I got to that point, and there's a few cops standing there, and I said, hey guys, I said, where's Choo Choo? And they looked at me. They said, excuse me? I said, where's Choo Choo? Expecting that Pete Chudy would be, somewhere in the vicinity. And the guy says, well, go back upstairs and get on the Choo Choo. It's upstairs, meaning the trains. And I said, no, Pete Chudy, one of your partners. And the guy goes, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, sorry.
You got an attitude in the Bronx? No.
We're the officials going to the game. That's how we got to the games.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You even see broadcasters. I know our buddy Paul Olden, he's got a place in Brooklyn, so he takes the train in every day,
Yeah.
So I want to know your Yankee Stadium spread for the umpires. Did you guys get Peter Luger's Steakhouse stuff sent to you?
No, we did not. And listen, the old Yankee Stadium, we first of
all, that's a good one, Bob.
Yeah, that is funny. The old Yankee Stadium, our locker room was it's okay. But I mean, listen, it wasn't huge, it wasn't small. It was okay. I do remember one time when the Pope came to New York and went to Yankees, had a whatever the Popes do, rally. What is a rally? I don't know. Excuse me. Is there a lightning bolt? I want to make sure. And they said that when he came here for that, the Pope, they had him staged in your locker room, and I said the Pope was in the umpire locker room.
Yeah,
I said. I'm surprised they didn't have an exorcism or something to clear that room because, I've been in that locker room and I know what's said in that locker. Anyway, I don't want to go into that.
You should have had Bach and Bob in there. He would have got it cleared out in 2 minutes.
Well, but our food there was not at the old stadium was not that great. And in fact, Steve was one of our clubhouse guys when I first started up there, and a nice man, but he would just have it always wrong. After a night game, when it wasn't a getaway game, a getaway day game where we're rushing to the airport, after a night game, we would just have a little nosh, here and there, just a little, right. But
Gosh,
but but when we
Love it.
show up for a day game and it's a getaway game, we have flights and stuff, so we're not going to be hanging around the locker room. He goes, "Oh, I got you a hot meal today. We got a hot meal." It's like, Steve, that's great. You have it reversed. Give us some nosh when we're rushing, and the hot meal, when we're not going anywhere. But it was not
we
the
have
greatest food.
Dale, we have to explain Steve.
Well, that's the
Steve,
whole podcast.
Steve was a retired fire lieutenant on the
Yes.
New York Fire Department. Was
Yes.
a retired lieutenant. Everybody knew him as Lou because of lieutenant, but we knew him as Steve. And Steve was just a character, and we should actually do one of these on our clubhouse attendance.
Absolutely.
Both past and present. Yeah, because exactly.
Absolutely.
And Steve was scared to death to go ask for anything for us. And Dale's right. On getaway day, it was always maybe he would bring in like a hot meal, to consume within 5 minutes because you're rushing. But we always said to him, "Can we have this on Tuesday?
Yeah.
Instead of like a Wednesday afternoon game or whatever." But the classic thing about Steve was he had a joke for you pretty much every night. And so I was working with Larry Barnett, and he always called him Chief. And after the game, Steve would always say, after 10 minutes after we've been in the locker room, he'd say, "Chief," look at Barnett, and he'd say, "Can I have one, Chief?" And Larry would say, "Sure, go ahead, Steve." And Steve would crack a beer. He'd pour it in a cup, and he'd say, "Cheers, guys. It's a little vitamin P." And
This is a routine.
or if when he served the food, he would say, he would say, he said, "Enjoy the meatballs. They're the cats."
It's the same time. It's the same thing every time. Every time.
What did he have? What did he have? Dangerfield was in there with him or something?
Oh, he was the nicest
He's the nicest guy. You got to realize too, when Jimmy said he wouldn't ask for anything because they would pound everyone walked on eggshells at Yankee Stadium, especially the people that work there, especially when the boss was in town. You could tell when we walked into the stadium, you could tell if the boss was in town or not. Because if he was in town, everyone was puckered up. It was like everyone was scared of their own shadow. And Steve, who I would say wasn't a real aggressive guy anyway, his personality, and there, I mean, anytime he would ask, the reason the hot meal was a big deal because they didn't want to give us anything. I mean, they,
Right.
so to ask and get them approve a hot meal was like a big deal for him to get that done. Unfortunately, it always happened on the days that we didn't really want a hot meal, but that was, now speaking of Yankee Stadium, as far as an umpire, as far as some of the biggest games, Jimmy and I, were both involved in some of the biggest games of my career was at Yankee Stadium, and my first and second World Series involved the Yankees. My first playoff plate game that Jimmy was there, I went 15 innings, 5 hours and 13 minutes. And remember, you and your brother and I, we went to a deli at about 3 or 3:30 in the morning. There's a couple of people talking about the Yankee game and the big win, and blah blah blah. And I'm thinking, it's so funny. It was like 3 a.m. We're exhausted. We had a 5-hour game. It's just all this stuff. And these guys are talking about the game, and we're sitting there. I was thinking to myself, they have no clue. They are sitting next to two of the umpires. They weren't talking to us. They were just talking, but they have zero clue. That's how anonymous in a way you are. Yet he was probably yelling at us, a few hours earlier. I mean, but I've had a lot of history, a lot of huge games. The George W. Bush first pitch, I had the plate that game. Jimmy was there. You were at second base that game.
Yep.
Yeah, it
They
was
had to pop up in the infield.
exactly. And you and I made that icon. I mean,
Yep.
I tell that story all the time.
Yeah.
So it brings back a lot of the old Yankee Stadium has a lot of memories, mostly good, a few not.
Yeah.
that because we worked so many games. Remember, we came up when in the American League, not working
Right.
National League games. So you work these cities and these teams a lot more often. Just because. And so and Yankee that was but the I remember coming up at the American League, the toughest places, Yankee Stadium, Fenway Park, Tiger Stadium. Sparky Anderson was there. That was the first manager I ever ejected, Sparky. you know, and then Baltimore, which is always the old Memorial Stadium before that. They changed that out. Those four were like completely different from all the other ones.
Right.
All the other American League venues, and they're all except for Fenway, they're all gone.
And
Yeah.
if you were, and as a young umpire, and when you were coming up and down, those are the stadiums you went to. You didn't
Yeah,
go to the West Coast. You didn't get to go to Anaheim to Disney World, Disneyland, or anything like that. As a young umpire, you went to New York, Boston, Detroit, Baltimore, and maybe Toronto. Something like that. But getting back to Yankee Stadium, one of the like Dale said, if the boss was in town, you could Dale's exactly 1,000% right, because when you walk through the tunnels, if they were sitting on stools, George Steinbrenner was not in town. If the stools were gone and they were all standing, George Steinbrenner was in town, and you knew it because he walked the tunnels.
yeah,
And if you were caught sitting down, George, they told stories that he'd fire people right on the spot.
yeah.
What a
And
lovely man.
see, in Yankee Stadium is also where we had the 9/11 World Series.
Right.
And if you could have seen the tunnels during that period of time, those 3 days that we spent in New York, that was just unbelievable. I mean, the Secret Service, the police, uh, we had
It's
everybody in those tunnels.
it's an amazing. I write about it in my book, and I'm not plugging the book, but I am. But but it really was a remarkable show of force, a show of security that happened. Just that first game of the World Series that was played in New York, Game 3, was exactly 8 weeks after 9/11,
Wow.
and you're 14 miles from the World
Yeah,
Trade
sure.
Center, and and when normally at the old Yankee Stadium, there's the press gate. You came in, you said, "Hey guys," you went right down these stairs. There's somebody at the bottom of the stairs. Hey, what's going? You go down this long tunnel, take a left down another long tunnel. There's nobody around. Then you get to the end of that tunnel. That's the Yankee clubhouse. You take a right, and there's a few people there, security or whatever, and they're tunneled to their dugout. We go past that another 30 yards, and there's our locker room, and there may or may not be somebody there. That's a normal day. During the 2001 World Series, and especially when George W. Bush was there to throw out the first pitch that Game 3, not only first of all, you walk in, you had to have your credentials. During the regular season, we had credentials. We rarely had them around our neck or anything because no one gave a shit. They knew who we were. I mean and so we walk up. It's the same guy we've seen for years, but we had to show our credentials and this and that. Of course, we had to go through the the whatever they're called.
Tachometer.
Thank you. Yeah. So as far as weapons or anything like that. Went down the stairs. There was somebody there standing there, and now that those two long tunnels where no one was there during the regular season, there was a security guard every, what do you say, 15 feet maybe, just standing there.
He's easily.
I mean, just lined up,
Wow.
and this tunnel, these two tunnels, there's only two doors to go somewhere. I think one was an X-ray room or something, and then one was
Yeah.
kind of a back door to the clubhouse for the Yankees type thing. But it's not like there's a bunch of doors and things going on. There's nothing going on, and they had all these security guys. We come up to where the Yankee clubhouse is, and usually there was two or three big security dudes there. It was a bunch of them. I mean, they a bunch of them, and walk through and you had to have your credentials showing. I mean, if they were underneath your sport coat or something somehow, just because they want to make sure that and some of these people, they know who you are. Doesn't matter. They want to, they want to see it. Then we went down to our umpire room, and that's a lot of times in regular season, no one was there. You might have somebody there sitting there just wasting time. but there was a couple of people there. That's when Jimmy and I, we were the first to arrive that day. We walk in, and that's when we saw the Secret Service guy. We didn't know who it was. Some guy was standing there or sitting in our room, and we said, "Hey, how you doing?" He goes, "I'm Joe Blow. I'm a United States Secret Service. I'll be coming out in an umpire uniform with you guys today." And we said, "Oh, okay, cool."
Yeah. Didn't get the memo on that one.
Yeah, yeah. But the show of security and when when we were in Arizona for that series, I remember one time we were just approaching the entrance to our locker room, and out comes a couple of police with bomb sniffing dogs that they'd been through our room in part of their whole routine of sniffing out the stadium to make sure that you don't get that during the regular season. Okay. So I mean I always felt that as crazy as things were going there in 2001 after 9/11, we could have been in the safest place possible because
Yeah,
of the
absolutely.
security. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you. Oh, I'm sorry, Jimmy.
As
Go
far
ahead.
as Yankee Stadium went, on the people have to realize, and it's really amazing. The game of baseball is played on a baseball field, and that's our home. That's where we were at home. The intricacies of each park was always underneath, and or the ground rules. That's the beauty of it. And we were talking just before we came on that baseball is the only sport where the field part, the playing field part, is not regulated, except for the infield. The infield is the only thing that's actually regulated by rule book. It has to be certain dimensions from first to third, first to second, or first to third and second, home plate. Everything has to be exactly. You know what? The outfield is up for grabs. And Yankee Stadium was actually kind of an easy stadium to work, but I'm sure we'll get into some that will it curled our hair of the hair we had left, and so it's the Yankee Stadium. Really, I actually really loved Yankee Stadium. That was one of my old Yankee Stadium was one of my favorites.
Well, you guys know my wife. We went there. I took Noreen there in, I think it was '02, and they were playing the Giants, and it was sold out. Barry Bonds, blah blah blah
Yeah.
blah blah. So we walked in, and my wife, who, as you know, is one of the biggest baseball fans I know. She walked in, and she's like, "Oh my God, Babe Ruth played on this field. Lou Gehrig played here. Mickey Mantle played here." She was in awe, and we're not Yankee fans. It's one of those places, if you're a baseball fan, you had to go see, even if you
Well,
didn't like
it's a
the Yankees.
destination stadium.
Yeah, absolutely. Think like
Wrigley is,
Fenway and
Fenway
Wrigley.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
If
I think the old Bush Stadium had that or about it. But the thing is, you do at least when the first time I ever went to Yankee Stadium, my first game ever there, I was at third base, which is odd because usually when they send the young guy,
Yeah,
but
it's been
uh,
a 4 game series.
I remember just after ground rules running out, as the game hadn't started, they're warming up, whatever, and I was just looking around and go, how in the hell did I get here? I mean, from Eugene, Oregon, at Madison Junior High, my first game ever, to I'm looking around. But Bob, you're talking about the history. You feel that. I mean, when you're out there, I felt that, and not only the famous players, and obviously Babe Ruth, all that stuff. But I thought of umpires too. Look at all the umpires that worked here. Look
Oh
at all
yeah.
the guys that went through. This was a shrine,
Oh
a
yeah.
historical shrine type of thing. Fenway has the same thing. Wrigley's the same thing. When I just a couple weeks ago when I went to the Oregon Michigan game at the Big House, there's so much history in that stadium.
Yeah.
That is cool. That's a cool thing. That's what keeps for generations baseball alive is grandfathers to fathers to grandson, baseball fans that share moments together. I came here when I was your age and I did and there's a history there, but you definitely felt it in some of these stadiums. Now I didn't feel it necessarily in the Trop. Uh, or after a while maybe the Metrodome because they were successful a little bit while I was there, but it had a completely different feel than those ballparks that had been there a long time, and of course except for Fenway. They're all gone now.
Dale, are you saying the Kingdom didn't have that je ne sais quoi of Fenway and Yankee
The
Stadium?
Kingdom, what I remember the history of is when I went to a Stones concert there in '81, and I'm surprised I remembered anything, frankly.
I remember I told my dad the first time I worked at Yankee Stadium, and my dad, this was my classic. My dad looked at me, or on the phone, he says to me, he says, "You played with the ghost." And I never really realized that until a couple years later, because it was my first time there. I was kind of overwhelmed. And I remember a couple years later, especially our World Series there and stuff, and that always came back to me. And he was exactly right. We played with the ghost. We played
Yeah.
with the legends.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
know, that little funny thing about New York. First time I ever went there, we flew in, or I flew in late at night. I forget from where we're coming. Anyway, it was late at night, and we were staying at the old Summit, 51st in
yeah,
Lexington, and I, you know, I think I had a drink. I didn't go anywhere. I went to bed. I was tired, whatever, and I had an off day the next day. I thought I'm going to come out, get up, and I'm going to see New York. I mean, I've never been there. I was excited. Well, the first thing I do when I got up, I walk out of the Summit onto the sidewalk there and stop and just start, like, which direction should I go? Well, you're in New York, okay? You're in the middle of the frickin' sidewalk, and there are people going everywhere. And immediately, my first lesson in New York is do not stand in the middle of the sidewalk. You can look like an idiot, okay?
Tourist.
you know,
okay. He's exactly right, especially in that little area right there too.
yes,
The
yes,
brownstones and everything like that. If you were in Times Square, you had some sort of you could pick up on on details and stuff like that, and landmarks and stuff. But Dale's exactly right. When we stayed in the Summit, we're surrounded by brownstones and stuff like that down the streets and everything. And I'm not trying to one up Dale at all on this, but it's an absolutely true story. I had the opportunity, and we usually would have the opportunity. Marty Springstead, our supervisor, who God rest his soul, he was like, I'm responsible. He's responsible for me even being in the big leagues.
as me also. He saved my career.
And he would usually once a year while you were in New York, he always took the train over to New Jersey after the games he would supervise us at, and he would take the train every night back home. And so, but at least once a series, Marty would go out and have a couple drinks with you in New York. He would show you the sights. And me being the rookie on the crew, and the other guys on my crew didn't drink. And so he took me out, and we went out, and I'm just going to say it. We got shit faced. And Marty had missed his trains and everything like that. So he asked me, he says, usually he would get a room, but we got in like at 3:30, in the morning. And he says, Joycey, how many beds you got in your room? I said, Marty, I actually got two. And he goes, okay, I'm shacking up with you tonight. He goes, I'll be out in the morning. You won't even know I'm there. I said, okay. So we went back to the hotel, and I would have to eat after a night of imbibing. And so I told Marty, here's my key. I actually had two keys with me for some reason. And I gave him the key, and he went, and I had to go find a deli somewhere. So I did. I actually started wandering, and I found a deli. I got a turkey sandwich, and now you got to remember, we used to dress in full suits.
Yeah.
Vest, tie, white shirts, suits, and everything. And I'm walking around, like Dale said, and this is what jarred my memory on this. I looked around. I didn't know where I was. I was lost. And so I said, okay, now you talk about sobering up quick. Start walking down the street, and there's brownstones on each side. And so I keep walking. I come up, and there's a refrigerator box sitting on the street. And I look, and there's a pair of feet sticking out of the refrigerator box. So I kicked the box, and I said, hey, buddy, I'll give you $5 if you could point me in the direction of Lexington Avenue. All of a sudden, I was talking before about thing. All of a sudden, a hand comes up, and he went like that. And he opened up his hand like this. I put $5 in his hand and went straight down. He pointed me directly to Lex. And I was home in like 5 minutes.
You gotta love New York City.
Oh,
You're
That is a
just glad you
classic.
weren't in the Bronx or man or Harlem with that, man. You might not have made it back.
Jimmy, I have heard that story before. I'm sure at one time I realized it, but I didn't realize it was you. I mean, when you
yep.
started saying that story, I was going, "Oh my God, I know this story. I've
Oh,
heard this story down passed down for for years." One thing about the Lexington, I it was a typical New York hotel where the rooms were not big.
yep.
And the bathrooms were really small, and it just it was you felt just confined. But okay, let me tell you a story. I was working with Brinkman. And we had the Red Sox were in town, huge rivalry, and we had a Saturday afternoon game. So afterwards, we went out to dinner and Smith and Walensky's, and and of course we're in suits and ties, the whole thing. And we end up Joe and I end up hitting a couple places, and we hit PJ Clark's, at 2:30 or whatever the hell it was, and we're well on our way. Remember, we had a day game, and there were a bunch of Boston fans in there, and they recognized Joe. And McNamara was the manager for Boston, and they said, "Hey, Joe, what do you think of Mac?" And Joe said something not really nice, and then then but it was obvious. All these Boston fans, and they're coming in, they're asking. And so Joe said, I got to get out of here. And so we drank. And so anyway, we walked back to Lexington, and Joe is, uh, you know, he's been overserved. Okay, so I help him up. I said, let's get you in your room, Joe. And so he gives me his key, and I get him in. And he goes, thanks, Scotty. He lays down on the bed, full suit and everything, and I give him the case, and I'll see you tomorrow. Well, of course, the next day is a day game, right? Sunday afternoon getaway game. So we're meeting at 10:30 or something in the morning in the lobby, and we're down there, and all three of us are down here. And now Joe joins us. We're all in suits and stuff. Joe's got sunglasses on, walks up, and he's got this little smirk on his face, and you can tell. I go, "What's up, Joe? How you feeling?" He goes, well, "I'm feeling better." He said, "When I woke up, I looked around. I'm in my suit. He goes, I'm on the bed. I go, I'm glad I got here." And he said, I got up and I looked down, and he goes, "I thought I had shit the bed." And it was brown. He goes, "Oh my God!" And he smelled it. Smelled like mint, and he smelled it. He had slept on his mints that they put on the bed, so they
Right back.
melted. So they melted during, during the night, and so he woke up and thought he had shit the bed. And then he said, "Well, it's minty fresh. It wasn't that bad, It was one of the. We laughed. Oh my God! I at his retirement party. I told that story to everybody. I mean, it was one of the funnier things I'd ever hit me. And that was in New York. That was my first year, and at the Lexington at 51st and Lexington at
What
a
was your
summit.
Jimmy's he's little got a little stomach thing going today, but he's okay. He'll be right back. Dale, what were some of your favorite places after a game in New York? Obviously, you couldn't get to Peter Luger's in Brooklyn after a night game in
No, no.
Yankee Stadium. That wasn't going to happen. But where did you guys go? Because you were in like
Well,
Midtown,
the thing is, in a lot of these cities, we had our go-tos because we knew the
right?
people there and that kind of stuff, and they weren't necessarily the. I mean, there's some great restaurants. Don't get me wrong, but Smith and Walensky's in New York was and still is a umpire staple. I mean, we just know the people there, and we used to the Summit, where the hotel we just signed about. We used to stay there. We don't, they stay at different places now, but that used to be pretty close to Smith and Willie's, and I think that's probably how it all started. There was a bar that's no longer. I don't believe it's there anymore. I'm pretty sure it's not, but it's called Runyon's. That was there for a long, long time. That we used to go to. McSherry was big in there because John was from New York, and so he would be there in the off season and whatever. In the old days, early in my career, Smith and Walensky's was the go-to, basically. PJ Clark's we'd hit,
Yeah,
and Runyon's.
yeah.
Um, that's evolved. Smith and Willie's is still a place that we go to. The guys go to. In fact, when I was in New York promoting the book and stuff a couple of years ago, I walked into there's the restaurant part, and then there's the bar part where you can eat in there also. But we'd always go in the bar part, and I mean, I hadn't been there in several years, and here a couple of the bartenders, Dale, I mean, these guys, some of these guys have been there forever,
Yeah.
and have stories. And those that was mainly the National League guys. A lot of times went to uh,
Gallagher's.
Gallagher's. Thank you. Yeah, Gallagher's, another steakhouse that was a
Yep.
different part of Manhattan, and I'd been there a few times and had some fun there. But that was probably the mainstay of especially early in my career.
Did you guys ever go to Carnegie on 8th and what 54th?
Seventh.
Seventh and 54. Is that what you say?
Seventh and
He knows the
7th.
phone number. I think
Uh,
he does.
Walked
Oh
in there.
my God.
I'd go there almost every night.
Well, Jimmy, the place that you and your brother and I went, was that Stars Deli or
Yeah, that was Stars Deli. That
Stars?
was
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
on.
You guys go to Katz's at all? You had to go that was south, down towards South Street Seaport. That was in, lower end of Manhattan.
Yeah, we usually, we stayed around where we were, the
Right.
hotel we were staying at. I mean, New York's a real walkable city. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's easy, and a lot of times a lot more convenient than trying to get a cab or anything. Uh, but there it's got a ton of places, obviously. There's and in off days we might especially more later on in my career, try some different places or whatever. But the go-tos kind of remain the same, and a lot of them are the same. That Jimmy and I, throughout our career in some of the cities that have been there forever. I mean, the umpires have been going there forever.
Well, we're leaving New York now, everybody. I think we're going to fly to Detroit. What do you guys think? You want to head to Detroit?
Well, Detroit with Jimmy, he commuted Detroit because
Yeah, so
That's right. He's from
I
Toledo.
very rarely stayed overnight in Detroit until after my parents passed away. So for the first 25 years, I didn't. I just went and worked.
yeah, Detroit was
Never
tough. I
mind,
mean,
back.
Tiger Stadium, downtown Detroit wasn't great,
No, no.
and we used to go to
I'm in no trouble there, so I'm not going to even mention or even talk about downtown Detroit. I used to play baseball there when I was in college and stuff. I used to play there, but uh, so I'm not even going to talk about downtown Detroit.
Well, there was an old sports bar there that was huge when the '60s Tigers and
Yeah,
and when all that stuff, but was really kind of dying out when my first couple of years. Garcia would take me there.
Yeah.
I worked with two Garcia and two guys from Michigan that commuted Detroit, uh, Battle Creek and wherever Welke was from. I can't remember. Anyway,
Cold
uh,
walk.
Kalamazoo.
Yep.
Yeah. So they would commute it. So it was just Garcia and we stayed in Dearborn because downtown Detroit is not any place you wanted to stay. Now that's changed with the new ballpark and
right.
they've cleaned some stuff up but this is back early in my career. So, and we stayed at this huge Hyatt in Dearborn, which was, nice. There was a big mall and stuff. So there's whatever. But after night games, a lot of times Richie and I would just go to this AC Lindell's.
That's it.
AC
Lindell's.
Lindell's. And that was it had a big time history for 20 plus whatever, how many years, I don't know. But by now, I'm talking about in the mid 80s, 86, 87, it was just dead. There was pictures everywhere. I mean, you could tell this place at one time was quite a place. And from what I understand, Tiger players would go there after games
Yeah,
sometimes, and Lions players. And so it had a history, but we'd go there a few times, and but it hardly anybody was there. We'd talk to the owner and stuff. But to finish off Detroit, it really wasn't a great town to go out in because we stayed in Dearborn, and a lot of times it would just go back to Dearborn to the Hyatt, have a couple pops there, and call it a night. Uh, it's changed a little bit with the changing of the ballpark downtown, and that area has cleaned up, and it's really actually not bad at all. But that's a city that's changed quite a bit. And just before you go, Jimmy, and we'll get to Cleveland, but I can tell you right now, Cleveland is unbelievable from when I first went there to what it is
oh,
today.
absolutely.
I
I'm
mean,
right there with you.
night and day. you know?
Wasn't there a
First
baseball
time I
team?
was in Cleveland was in 1976, and we were on our way back from our East Coast trip, the bicentennial, and I was a senior in I graduated high school, and we're in Cleveland. It's like 7:30, the game's going on, and I snuck in for a few minutes to take some photos. It's on my website, and I'm looking around, I'm thinking, this is depressing. You know, Dale, Jimmy, the old mistake by the lake, that
Yeah.
It wasn't a great area back then. Then they got the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they started really cleaning up the lakefront. And now it's everybody wants to go to Cleveland.
Yeah,
It's fun. Yeah.
the flats were phenomenal. But see that Cleveland's another one where I commuted. So
Right.
not until after my parents had left that I can't even remember the place we used to go to. Daryl Cousins used to take me to the place that you went down the alley.
Yeah, it was right by the Hyatt, right around the corner,
Right.
kind of.
I can't think what the name. I don't even know the name of that
Yeah, I
place.
can't off the top of my head think of it either. But yeah, that's where the guys hung
Yeah.
out. But that
Yeah.
was when we started staying downtown. I mean, my
Right.
first 15 years, we didn't even stay downtown. It wasn't until 97 or 98 that when the new stadium came in 94, I believe. And we started staying downtown, maybe 95, 96, started kind of checking places out because
Yeah.
otherwise we stayed at the airport in Cleveland with the old Mistake by the Lake, which, by the way, it was 80,000. It held
Yeah,
80,000. I
yeah.
had their opening day there in 1992. They opened on the road, but it was their home opener, and I think they said 80,000 were there, and it was packed. But the game went 6 hours and 30 minutes,
Oh,
19 innings, and by the time it was over, there were about five people over here, and three of them worked for the. It was like, my longest game ever behind the plate was at the Mistake by the Lake in '92. But getting back to Detroit, not a lot going on there. Another city that changed a lot, and we just talked about, is Baltimore. When they moved the stadium, the Inner Harbor was growing,
Yeah.
and so and it's so different now. Even I mean, when they still had the old stadium, we'd stay at that Holiday. I don't know if you stayed at that Holiday Inn,
Yeah.
that old Holiday Inn right there, and you got about a block and a half off that track, and you were probably in trouble.
Yeah.
yes.
So,
Yeah.
and so that's a city that's changed a lot. Cleveland and Baltimore for the better, obviously.
Well,
Um,
one thing,
One of the things that's really unique about every ballpark back then, the older ballparks and stuff like that, is how we got to the field.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the one that really sticks in my head is Memorial Park in Baltimore. We used to walk across planks
Yes.
to get over the mud puddles
yep,
that
I
were
know what you're
underneath the
talking about.
stands, just to get to. That was our entrance to the field.
Yeah, it was. I don't know how it wasn't condemned. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah,
it was just a shithole. And then when you finally maneuvered your way over the planks and didn't fall down into the rafters or into some mud puddle, then you got to walk on the field and see the Orioles and Weaver or Old Man Ripken, and it was like, let's go back to the planks.
It was unbelievable. Then, and then you come off the field, you had to walk back through the same place. It stunk. It was water infested. And I am not exaggerating. There were 2x12s that was your runway, your walkway to get back to your locker room or get
Absolutely
onto the
true.
field.
That is absolutely true. I worked
And
the last games, 3 games there when they closed that place, and was thrilled to say that we weren't coming back to this place.
and Detroit, let's go back to Detroit for one other thing, Dale. I know you remember this. Detroit's locker room was not very stellar. Now, our clubhouse guy was Jim Schmankel, and Jim Schmankel was he actually was he went to my high school. He's a little bit older than I am, and he went to Central Catholic in Toledo. He went from the Mud Hens to the Tigers and became their clubhouse both on both sides, their clubhouse guy. And our locker room in Detroit is, first of all, it was not a locker room because there was not a locker in the room. We hung our clothes on nails that were hammered into a 2x4 on the wall.
Well, remember, and just like the old Milwaukee County Stadium, the room that we ended up using as our locker room was supposed to be the manager's office
Yes,
to the
yes,
clubhouse. Then they
yes.
said, "Oh my God, we don't have an official's room. We don't have an umpire room." So, both in Old County Stadium and in Tiger Stadium, we literally were in what was supposed to be the manager's office. So it's basically right in. You go in through the dugout, you go through the tunnel with the players. You go in Tiger Stadium, you went up the stairs, and then they took the first left into their clubhouse, and we took the second left into our little
Right.
closet. we're not exaggerating when if no one was using it, someone would be sitting on the toilet. As that was one of the places that you sat because there was no room there. You have four guys with four trunks and all of our equipment. Then you've got a little shower and a little. I mean, it was. But the worst part about it is when the Tigers lost and you're walking up through and they're not happy with you about something, and you're walking with them in the dugout in this tunnel that wasn't that long, but seemed like an eternity because when people are screaming at you. I mean, there were times that we went into our room and someone would bang on our door and be screaming at us as we're in our room because they're right there. They're right there.
Right there.
Same thing with old County Stadium.
And
It,
it was a rule in Detroit that if you had to do any business, meaning lavatory wise, you did them at the hotel.
yeah,
Because,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
it was a one holer. And I am not exaggerating.
It's
It was
absolutely true.
my garage is a luxury compared to the old Detroit locker room.
Yeah, I've seen Chevron stations with better
Yes, yeah, yeah.
facilities. But
Well, I will say this about the food in Detroit. They had the Hamtramck sausages, the Italian sausages at the game with the hot peppers. Dynamite. You didn't need to go out to eat afterward. They were that good. And also in Cleveland, the hot dogs with the stadium or secret sauce.
Yeah.
It's like the same thing in Milwaukee with the brats. That's good ballpark food. That's what I mean when we're talking about Yankee Stadium and the ballpark and all these restaurants and shit. Most people just want a hot dog and a beer, like I've said, and it's true. Even though you got to pay $25 for a beer now, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
I got
But
a cousin. I got a cousin in Cleveland that he used to give me the secret mustard, and he thought that was like the gift of the Magi's. So
well, anytime you say secret mustard, you got me. All right. So,
yeah,
Dale knows.
but the one thing about such a crappy locker room and to get in and out of it and just Detroit was tough. Schmeichel did take care of us as far as food. You always had good food
absolutely.
there and great service. And then he stayed. He's still with them, as far as I
Yeah, but
know.
he's not the umpire attendant anymore. They moved him over to the other side.
Okay, okay. But it was a huge improvement at the new stadium in Detroit as far as our facilities. Plus, we didn't have to. Anytime we don't have to go with the play where the players go. Fenway, we used to have to go right with the Red Sox up the
Yeah.
tunnel, up the stairs. They would take a left, and then we'd go up another flight of stairs to our place. That was the thing about baseball. It's not a problem if the in Detroit if the Tigers won because they're all out shaking hands. And
Yeah.
then we go right through there. But when they lose, they're all sitting right there. And I mean, cheap shots and yelling matches and screaming. I mean, you had that in Boston, you had it in Detroit. You could have it in the old Mistake by the Lake. Several places. Now, the newer stadiums, almost all of them we have our own entrance. We don't have to go through dugouts and that kind of stuff. And it's just so much better for everybody
Yeah, but
involved.
still in Boston, you still have to go through the visitors' locker room. You walk
Visitors
up to
locker
the
room, although
visitors,
we
and
had
not
an
only
escape
that, you
hatch.
walk into their locker room. You walk into their locker room after the game, and then as you get to their literally, the guys standing there taking their hats, the clubhouse guys taking their hats, and you walk by and he puts his hand on. You kind of look at the guy. He's looking to grab your hat, and then you went through a door out into
Concourse.
the concourse, and that's where our locker room was. So
Right.
it
And
was on
but you had the escape hatch. Remember,
yes,
if the visiting team was pissed off at you about something and they lose the game, instead of going up there, we just go the long way. We go all the way out to left field and that
right,
opening
exactly. Yeah,
in
the
foul
garage door.
ground and left field, that would be open and we would just escape
Right,
that way
garage
and
door.
avoid the whole damn thing. But nowadays, my favorite, Jimmy, is Arizona. Our
Yeah,
locker room, you walk up a couple stairs, you open the door, and you're on the field.
on the
Boom.
field.
It's our own entrance and exit on and off the field. It goes directly, I mean, literally into our locker room, and that to me is ideal. That's your best one right there.
Yep, I agree. I agree with that. Agree with
Well,
that. Cleveland's like that a little bit.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Out there the same way, but there's always people coming through though.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
what people don't realize at Fenway Park is the Red Sox locker or the clubhouse is on the concourse level. It's
Yeah.
you can't. you have to know what it is. I know what it is,
Right.
but people walk right by it. They won't even, that's the Red Sox clubhouse is right there.
Right.
Sometimes they'll open the door and you can peek in and you can see the guys in there, but it was built in what, 1843 or whatever. So, oh, let's put a room here.
Yeah, that was in my early in my career, it seems like especially when you're a young umpire, there's one or two teams that they all are on you because you're young or whatever, but there's one or two teams that just for a cycle for a couple of years just could not, they just didn't believe a damn thing you did. Boston was one of mine my first couple of years, and so games in Fenway were as for me could be just I should get hazard pay just to get on and off the damn field. And that was not pleasant at times.
Well,
It's amazing because mine. I always got along with the Red Sox. Mine was Baltimore. I
You're right.
just like Rocky Rowe used to say, he hated the colors orange and black.
He hated Halloween.
Yeah, hated Halloween, hated
Halloween.
orange and black. Rocky Rowe was a classic, and
But that some of those old ballparks are Comiskey, old Comiskey. That was um, our locker room was not very big. It was very pedestrian, if that's the right word. And you had to go through the concourse to get to your locker room, or not from the field, but I mean from the when you enter it, and it was they would our concessions there. Of course, Chicago. A lot of times we went out after game, even night games, because it's such great food and places we went. So it wasn't that big a deal. But I mean, what our food for Comiskey was the concessions. There was a concession stand right outside our door. And what do you want? You want a hot dog? You want whatever was at the concessions. That's what we got to choose from.
You mean you didn't go across the street to the bar, McCuddy's?
Was it there at the old place
Yeah, that
too?
was right across from the ticket office on 35th, and it's right across the street. It's
We
obviously
never did. I mean, I didn't anyway.
it's
We
it was a
when we
quiet.
were done with Comiskey, we went back downtown.
Yeah,
we went back
you don't.
downtown.
You
Yeah,
mean you didn't go to Cabrini Green's?
No, we drove
Thing
we
that.
drove by it.
Yeah, with the windows rolled up and a highway cop escort.
The last
For those of you who don't
Chicago.
know, Cabrini Greens was across the Dan Ryan Expressway, and it wasn't a nice area to go to, not
no,
at all. And you didn't go there at night if you were anybody, because
no.
they
I'm
didn't have a lot of
gonna say
nice
this out
hombres.
loud. I want to say this out loud, and I'll probably get in trouble for it. But I actually liked old Kaminsky Park
I,
better than new Kaminsky Park.
I agree with you.
Not only the surrounding stadium wise, but the field also. I always thought that um, the field in old Kaminsky Park seemed like it was just a prime field, and same grounds crew guy.
Roger.
Roger, same grounds crew guy. But for some reason, the new Kaminsky Park field just wasn't the same. It never was.
The
Humble.
the new Comiskey or whatever the hell it's called now. It was a year before Baltimore and Texas opened their new stadiums, which Baltimore and or Baltimore and Texas, or no, Cleveland and Texas is what I meant.
Yeah,
Cleveland,
yeah.
Texas. But Baltimore started the trend of the new stadium with where it looked like some old fashioned features, but it was a modern stadium. Chicago did none of that. They just built a
Right.
very generic, non personality stadium with. From what I've never been up there, what I understand, the upper levels, the stairs are so steep
Right.
going up and down the aisles. It's like you're going to fall onto the field or something. But there was no personality to it at all. It was just a functioning thing where Baltimore did that, and of course, and then Cleveland and Texas had different quirks and things to bring of history of the game or whatever. And I always thought, how did they miss out on that? How did they not?
Especially Chicago. Especially
Exactly.
Chicago. I mean,
Yeah.
you got Soldier Field as you go to the ballpark and stuff like that. When we you drove by Soldier Field, which was beautiful and everything like that. Okay, Wrigley's always going to be Wrigley. They're never going. That place is never going to go away. But Dale's exactly right. For some reason, they just build it in the parking lot. And you talk about a Rutgers set. I mean, they put that place up in less than a year and a half.
I
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
it shows. It's. I've been there. I was there when it opened, and not impressed at all. I've been back
And the
several
thing about
times, and I'm like,
and the thing
you
about
could
it
have done
is, it
so
was
much
kind of like
better.
it was kind of like it was built as or we're leaving, it was a threat.
Right, right,
I'm gonna take my ball and go home and, okay, to keep it. And I actually don't have a problem where it is because it's commutable,
right,
but I don't think there was a lot of thought behind where to put new Kaminsky Park.
Right.
Let's just put it that way. So
well, not only where to put it, but just to it's like a when you when you used to have like the East German buildings were just blah. They were functional, but
yeah,
there was no personality to it. There were that's the feeling I get, especially when other stadiums within the 2 or 3 years of that opened and were completely new. I mean, entirely brand new and modern, but had aspects of looked like old vintage stuff. I mean, old Comiskey had so much history and the way it was built and stuff. You could have it seems like you could have added some certain things to the new stadium to uh, honor the old place or something. But it just was to me it was just a very generic, unpersonable place.
and the people in Chicago that would our security detail were all ex-police officers. And Fletch was actually a on-duty police officer
Yeah,
that worked the ballpark. And Maurice was a retired police officer. Maurice was a great, great, great
great
guy.
guy, great guy.
Favorites. But Fletch was a little off center. He was a cop on the Chicago police force. And one day we had an argument the night before that was just a blowout. And of course, the paper blew it up and everything like that. And so the next day, all of a sudden the door opens and our door was never locked. It was just a, pull open door and never locked. And Fletch comes over and he opens the door about this wide and he sticks his gun in. He sticks his gun in and he opens the door and says, I told you guys to keep this door locked because anybody can come in here and shoot you.
Yeah,
So
I'm glad he had a badge.
Dale, we got to tell the story about Chicago's Clock Room with Joey on who we famously got to meet one night.
Okay, you
Who
got it.
won?
This is.
Go ahead.
I mean, so we're working a game and we see sitting right by where we leave the field between dead behind home plate and the White Sox dugout in the front row is Jesse Jackson and a couple his entourage there or whatever. So we saw him during the game, right? So the game's over and we go into our room and we exit right behind home plate and you go into this little foyer area and take a left and our door is there and then people just file out whatever. But like VIPs they have in that foyer area or whatever. Well, we're in our room. We hadn't been there. We just got there, and somebody popped in and said, "Hey, Jesse Jackson, and two other guys with his entourage there were just kind of there, right?" And he said, "He's right out this door." And I said, "Bring him in, have him come in. Let's meet him." Right. So in walks Jesse Jackson and these two guys, and of course, all three are black, and we introduce ourselves and stuff. Now, it just happened to be that our that our after game spread, the food that, I mean, sometimes you have pasta, sometimes you have fish, sometimes, whatever. That night we had chicken and ribs. Okay. Now you just can't
You
make that up.
this up. You
And
can't
so,
make this.
and so we introduced the Jesse Jackson stuff and everybody. And I said, hey, you guys hungry? Help your, and it's a plentiful. There's a ton of chicken and rib. So if you guys are hungry, help yourself right here. And Jesse looks over and he goes, look at this, fellas. The white boys have chicken and ribs. It's like,
Gospel. Unbelievable.
so they dished some up and we were talking, but I mean, it was like we have chicken and ribs maybe once every other series you have there or something, right?
That I think that was the only time we ever had them. It was unbelievable.
Oh man, the luck of the draw on that one, guys.
Oh, it was funny. One time Jerry Springer was there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so we had him come in and we, hey, just and I remember the question was, do you are you even you've been doing this a while. Are there times that you just can't believe what's happening, or whatever? And Jerry goes, look it. He goes, uh, my show is entertainment. He goes, my show is we're not solving nuclear secrets. We're not figuring out how to cure cancer. It's entertainment, and apparently people like it because the ratings are good, and they keep having me do it. He goes, someday the ratings aren't going to be good, and I won't be doing it. That's that was a synopsis of his show. It was like
And
he
he invited us the next day to come to his taping of his show. Remember
yeah,
that?
yeah.
We actually went, and what was his security guys? The big bald headed
I know
guy?
I want to say Rusty, but it's not Rusty. But
Something he
yeah, I
he
forget.
he met us at the door.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, that's one thing about um, every once in a while you meet people that just happen to be at the ballpark, celebrities or politicians or
Yeah.
whatever that you have a chance to say hello with or whatever. And Tim Cheetah, he started, we didn't have camera phones then.
Yeah,
And he would have
trying
these
to find pictures of
he
that.
would have the disposable camera in his trunk all the time. So if somebody did show up, you could get pictures, right? Which was a great idea because nowadays you just put up your phone and there you go. But this is back when we had to walk to school uphill both ways, and
In
Yeah.
the snow.
in the snow.
I actually
Exactly.
did the same thing. I actually carried a camera with me also. And
Yeah, yeah.
especially when digitals came out, it was a lot easier and
Yep.
stuff like that. And I don't have to tell you about cameras. So
Exactly.
Hey,
and I'm
we have to
trying to
get
find a
Keith
picture.
back on it.
I sent Dale a picture. I was going through old stuff the other day. When I say the other day, it could have been last year. And I found the picture with Jesse Jackson, me and Dale. I mean, we are so young looking, it's not even funny. And Jesse Jackson, for that matter,
Yeah.
was, I mean, if you visualize him now
Right.
and we had him back then, it was,
Hey
but
Jimmy, if you find that again, send it to me.
if I can,
Yeah.
I'll find it eventually, but, yeah,
Send it to me too, Jimmy. I'd like to
yeah.
see that picture.
No,
Talk,
I'll tell you
talk
what,
amongst yourselves.
we were brash, good-looking young studs.
Well, let's
Um,
not go that far, Dale. Come on.
Yeah.
did my nose get longer?
The way I look at it now, we're seasoned veterans, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's I still like raising the young studs, but we'll go with that. Um,
Let's swing around one more time. We're getting up on it here in a little bit. Let's head back to Fenway Park because my first time in Fenway Park was July 11th, 1970. No, July 12th, 1976. Red Sox Twins, the last game before the All-Star break. Fergie Jenkins pitched against Bill Singer, but I'm just guessing.
yes.
My cousins and my mom and dad, they went to see the Queen of England in a parade in downtown Boston that day. I went to Fenway Park. I'm 17 years old, and it was I can picture it like it was yesterday. Hot, humid,
Yeah.
Boston in the summertime. And it was probably one of the biggest thrills in sports I've ever had because I'm there with my heroes. There's Yaz, Fisk, all these guys, and it for people who have never been to Fenway Park, you're gonna walk in and like Dale and Jimmy said with Yankee Stadium and Tiger Stadium, your jaw's gonna drop because you're just gonna go, oh my God,
Yeah.
this is it.
Well, Fenway was unique. I mean, we talked about our locker rooms, which were not ideal, but it also had unique ground rules for umpires. So we
Yeah.
we actually changed our mechanics with nobody on when we worked at Fenway. Just to get in the weeds a little bit, we would have the third base umpire take more balls to left center
Yep.
because of the wall, because of the monster.
They had that
Then
little
we
jut out behind third base. They had that little, that jut behind third base.
right.
Ball would
Yeah.
go into left field. And the
But
fielders,
the monster, if you got caught out in left field, the third base umpire could not make it to second base.
If we did our normal rotation and the second base umpire went on that fly ball out to left field and the third base guy would come over, well, with the monster, that sucker could come off and you'd have a play at second, right?
right, right.
And the third base umpire just didn't have not enough time to get there. So we changed our mechanics a little bit and altered them because of the ground rules there. But they had yellow lines here and there. They had right field, you had spectator interference all along the line there.
You had the triangle in center field.
Right. And it was just a quirky, ground rule wise, a quirky place that you had to be aware of. like you were saying, that little thing that jets out right behind third base, where you
Yeah.
could have a shot down the line, which when any place else would be at least a double. For sure, this thing will hit that and caroom right back to the shortstop or something where you might have a play or certainly guys making a big turn thinking he's going to woof it to second, and next thing you know he's out. But so you had to be aware of that kind of stuff, and it was one thing about ground rules, and something we talked about before we came on is a lot of these new stadiums, and they'll say, "Oh, it's a great stadium. It's fan friendly." And when anytime an umpire hears fan friendly, that to us says umpire nightmare because what it means is the fans are usually closer to the field. They
Yeah.
are able to. There, look at that picture. Look at that picture. Holy cow!
Uh-oh. Show yeah. Oh my God. Oh,
That
Jimmy,
is a that is a classic.
you
That
guys
is
with hair.
so and so the cookie cutter multi-purpose stadiums, the Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Cincinnati, uh, a lot of those we loved because fans couldn't touch anything. We wouldn't have spectator interference problems, and it was clear cut. Either it hit the wall and came back, or it went out of play, a home run, or whatever. These fan friendly ones. When the Orioles opened and first opened, the left field scared the hell out of us. We thought there's going to be spectator interference issues there all day, because it wasn't a deep wall and they're right on it. And we even, when I worked with Garcia, we changed our mechanics a little bit there. The second base umpire with nobody on played a little bit deeper, and and we were aware of that just because we wanted to have some kind of a good this is all way before replay and stuff, so we wanted to have a good shot at seeing any spectator interference, whatever. But as Jimmy said earlier, baseball ground rules are unique to every stadium. Every stadium has something to be aware of. Or so the old Kingdom used to have and actually where they play now, you could field a ball down the right field line and go into a little corner out by the outfield wall, and the first base umpire who's calling fair ball, you go out of play, or a fly ball, you can't see him because he goes, and that so the second base umpire had to be aware that from his place he had to have an angle, so if there's a caught, if there's a catch, no catch, or whatever, little quirky things that you have to be aware of when you go into those stadiums, because if you're not, and then something happens, I'll never forget Gary Cedarstrom in the Kingdom. One of the first times he worked there, that exact same thing happened. I was at second base. It was a high fly ball deep into the right field corner. It ended up being foul. He went down the line. The guy catches the ball out of play. Gary looked at me. His eyes about as big as, like, what happened? I go, no, it's a catch. It's like he wasn't sure what the hell to do. But that's what's kind of unique with baseball, is that you have all these. I mean, Philadelphia, the new place, there were flowers up above the
Oh
left
yeah.
field
Yeah.
wall, and we had a whole shit house because two of us thought it hit the flowers and it was a home run, and two of us had it hitting the wall, and I mean the
And
Oh,
thrills.
Fenway Park is the park that had a ladder in left center field.
oh yeah. Yeah.
And if it hit the ladder and went over, it was a double.
Well,
Yeah.
you know why that ladder's there, right?
I have no idea.
Because batting practice, when they hit the balls in the net, the guys would used to climb up there and grab the balls out of the net. That's what was for the monster seats, you know?
Okay, I learned something today, because that's, I have a goal of learning something new every day. I have no idea. For 40 years or 30 years I worked in that ballpark, I had no idea what it was. I just thought it was a, fire escape.
I thought they
There'll
just
be a
put it there
test in
just
a
to
week,
screw with
guys.
us.
And
There'll be a
and
test
and
on this in a week, guys. So,
and
remember.
you brought up Buck and Bob Davidson. Well, Bob's first time to Boston, and speaking of ground rules, when they put people on the Green Monster, there's a metal strip that goes across
Yep.
the Green Monster, and it's painted rust color. It's not painted green, it's color, it's a like the almost like your chair behind you. Bob's first night in, or if it was actually his first night in Boston, he was working third, and we had to tell Bob, like Dale was saying, okay, Bob, you have left field up to the Morris code, up to the line of the scoreboard. You have that's your, and then the second base umpire had everything to the right of that. Well, muscle memory takes over when you're doing stuff like that. And so somebody, I can't even remember what team, oh, it was Toronto, because it was John Gibbons. Toronto Guy hits one to the monster, and Bob immediately starts coming to second. Muscle memory, thinking this, I'm going out, but I'm coming in because it's hit to the monster, and Bob's supposed to go out. So you're supposed to do this, but we're doing this. The ball hits that rust-colored metal. I don't even know what you would call it, frontage or whatever.
Shelf, yeah.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, Bob now it knows it's his call, so he knows he's got to make a call, so he calls home run. Well, immediately, I'm trying to think who the manager was at that time for Boston. Not going to come up with. Oh, it was John Farrell. John Farrell starts coming out, and I just looked at John Farrell and I said, "Hold on, I got this." So I walked over to Bob. Bob goes, "God, Jimmy," he says, "this got ballpark." He says, "What do you got?" And I said, "Bob," I said, "it hit that bracket up on the top of the wall. So it's whatever the guy gets." And I said, "He got the second base." And I said, it's just a double.
It's it ball's in play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so John Farrell turns around, goes right back. And now John Gibbons comes out and he's pissed. "It's a home run. It's a home run. You just call it a home run, Bob. What the hell? It's a home run like this." And I looked at Bob and I said, "Have you ejected him yet?" And Bob says, "No, not yet." And I said, "Here we go." Bob and I both, and it's on video. Bob, I'm going one way and it's like this. I'm doing this and Bob's doing it. So I told Gibbons, I told Gibbons after the game, "You're getting fined twice because you got ejected by two umpires." And he wrote a little note the next day. It was on my chair, and it said, "You were right, you asshole." That was his apology.
I like Gibby.
Asshole.
You guys have the love for the managers, you know. Hey Jimmy, when you tossed Junior, was that at the Kingdom?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, the fans must have been all over you that day.
Who was Dale? Who was our catcher back then?
Dave Valley?
Dave Valley. Dave Valley is talking about ground rules again. Dave Valley hit one of the hardest balls I've ever seen hit in my entire career, and he hit the center field speaker.
Whoa.
And that, I mean, you think about it.
Yeah.
About trying to hit the center field speaker in the Kingdom. Now, Dave Valley, I could actually outrun Dave Valley.
Yeah. With a piano on your back.
Exactly. And Dave Valley hits the hardest ball I've ever seen hit. It just keeps climbing and climbing, and he's doing kind of like the dead man trap right away. And all of a sudden, that ball hits the speaker and drops straight down. He got thrown out at second base. And now, naturally, Jim Lefevre, he was a little upset about that and said, "Well, it's in the ground rules. It's your ground rules.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
guys are the ones that set them."
well, Tampa, I call it arena baseball.
Yeah.
Because, the two outer rings are home runs, the inner rings are ground striking point. Unless it hits a foul, then it's dead. And if it hits, I mean, it's like
Nightmare.
It's a nightmare. It is a nightmare. Yeah.
Frank Thomas hit one of the hardest balls I also seen at that, and he almost hit it through the back of the building. But somehow or another, it was. They claimed it foul. They claimed Mariners, the Rays said it was a foul ball, and Jim McKean said it was a fair ball. It's the only place in baseball where there's a foul pole up to the ceiling, and it's separated from the real foul pole.
Yeah, it's on the catwalk and stuff, and there's a couple of them on because unbelievable.
It's definitely a cluster. I'll tell you that right now. It's definitely a cluster.
Hey, did you guys ever see the jail in the old vet in Philadelphia?
The jail, no.
Down in the basement, they have jail for the Eagles fans.
I've seen the jail at Cowboy Stadium.
Where?
At Jerry Jones' place in Arlington, the Cowboy Stadium, and we had a tour there. They had two jail cells underneath for people that got out of control.
I got out of
Baltimore has one too.
In the football or the
No, in the
in
baseball park.
baseball? Well,
Yeah, because Al Clark we were walking off the field one night in Baltimore, and a young lady threw a full beer on Clark walking off the field, and Al Clark, he got rightfully so, he got a little upset, and there was a security guard, a cop right there, and he says, "Arrest her," and they did. So now we get to the locker room and Clark is grumbling about it and stuff like that. And I said, "Al, I have a daughter." And I said, this girl made a bad choice." I said, "But you know what? I can't, it's a Saturday, so she's going to have to sit in jail for till Monday." I said, maybe we should go see if we can, maybe do something about this." I said, I've got a daughter and I can't imagine I want my daughter sitting in jail over the weekend. And she made a bad choice. I was playing peacemaker and everything like that. So after we got showered up and everything, we went to the office and and remember the cop there, Uncle Phil?
yeah, yeah.
Uncle Phil was actually the arresting officer. And we told him, he said, "Well, if she apologizes, Al says I'll drop, charges." So we walk in and she's sitting in this literally jail cell. And I was amazed. I didn't know baseball parks had jail cells.
Well, yeah.
So we walked in and she saw Al Clark and she just goes,
Oh,
sticks out her tongue, and Al Clark goes, pardon my vernacular, "Fuck it, let her go to jail." And she jumped up, "No, please, no, please." So now Clark is involved in he's the witness or the victim of
an assault.
an assault, and he's going to have to go to court and stuff. It was Boog Powell's niece,
Oh,
oh
gee.
man.
and
And the
so
plot gets thicker.
yes, exactly. And actually, she got convicted. Now they just made her pay a fine, but she actually,
Yeah.
Clark had to go testify and everything over that.
I got one quick story. Somebody gave me Ducks tickets, Anaheim Ducks tickets, when we were living in Southern California. So we had 4 tickets. It was just my wife and I. Couldn't find anybody else to go because the Ducks back then sucked. So I'm trying to just get rid of the tickets. And Anaheim Disney Gestapo got me and I got arrested and they put me in this little room. I mean, you could, it was, geez, like a closet. And I wasn't handcuffed or anything, but they go, "You got to go to court, blah, 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 blah." In Disney Gestapo, they're just arrogant. So it cost me $150 and I was just trying to get rid of the tickets. So
I
that's my claim to fame and I'm sticking to it. If it wasn't for the found a pot I had in the car, that was something different.
Well, that puts you in Tomorrowland.
Yeah, exactly. Or Fantasyland, one of the two. Well, guys, as always, this was different, and we're gonna have to do this again. This was fun. We'll have to pick another topic, and
there's several ballparks we didn't hit,
yeah,
and
we'll do it again. We'll
yeah.
do it again. Christmas is coming. We'll give them another Christmas present. Have people tuning in. So, on behalf of my partners, Dale Scott, say hi, Dale.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.
And of course, the one and only Jimmy Joyce. There it is, the salute, and our producer Fenway, who's napping, my dog.
Fenway.
Thank you all for tuning in. Remember, always take the road to the left. Don't be a follower. Don't be a sheep. You'll never know what you'll find.
Never know what you'll find.
Bye-bye.